Perfect. Well, welcome to GTACC 2021 and our Future is Now panel. I'm joined here by an industry-leading experts who've got a wide range of expertise all across our industry. You know, when you go to conferences and webinars, you often hear about capabilities that are coming in the future or things you'll be able to do at some point in the future. The reality is the future is now. And today what we want to do is explore some real-life examples of what our industry leaders are seeing happen in the industry and what other leaders are doing to transform the client and employee experience. So we'll spend about 45 minutes together. Hopefully you can stay for the whole time. At the end, we will ask some skill testing questions to our panelists around what do they see happening in the next 2 to 3 years. So you won't want to miss that. So let's get right into it and meet the panelists. So I'll ask each of you to introduce yourself, the company you're from, and generally an overview of the product and the problems you look to solve. So Ken, I'll let you kick us off.
Hello, my name is Ken Zrobuck, and I'm the Vice President of Digital Transformation for Land Intelligence. We are an organization that has been working with innovation in the unified communications and contact center space for a while. And we focus specifically on contact center as a service, automation, and basically process automation and giving our customers a competitive advantage. And we work with some of the top providers, those that are on the panel, and we are the guys that really put the feet to the street and get this stuff put in place. So
that's awesome. Micah, can I turn it to you?
Sure. My name is Micah Peterson. I'm the VP of Product with Procedure Flow. And what we've got is a product that visualizes procedures, as the name implies. And we make a really visual guide for call center agents to be able to go through scenarios and exceptions, which is often really difficult to train and takes a long time to onboard. So really our goal is to have somebody off the street, street to seat, have them pick up the phone and start answering it on day one. That is our stated goal. And we've had a tremendous track record with customers across every industry. We actually just added space exploration as a category of customer that we got, which is awesome. And we're able to cut training often by 50% or more, cut mentoring time by over 50%, increase quality and decrease average handle time. So really easy to follow knowledge and really super easy to manage. So exciting to be here with you today. Thank you.
Fantastic. I definitely need to read some procedures on space exploration. For sure. Gord, maybe I'll pass it to you.
Sure, thanks. So my name is Gordon Sexton. I'm the Global Design Lead for the financial services sector at Genesis. And Genesis is really focused on what we call experience as a server, which is combining things like omni-channel, artificial intelligence, the diaspora of data that exists in your contact center, but also outside of your contact center. Really being able to orchestrate the customer journeys that lead to actionable empathy at scale, satisfying your customers and what they need to do at the same time helping you achieve your business objectives.
Great, thanks, Gord. And Alan, last but not least.
Thank you. Callan Chavella here. I'm the EVP of Product Management here at Five9. So Five9 is known as a hosted contact center platform. It's globally available. But we also have quite a large install base into the WFO, WFA space, as well as more recently into the contact center automation, digital automation space. We are sort of known for pushing the concept of a digital workforce, which is essentially a software extension to the human workforce that you have within your organization. So if you imagine a traditional contact center, agents with headsets on, they're sort of augmented with software agents available from the cloud. And that's what we do.
Fantastic. So a very wide range of expertise here and lots of experience across the industry. So maybe we'll start, all the buzz right now is hyper automation and next gen capabilities. In the opening I talked about, everybody talking about that being the future, but really the future is now. So maybe I'll ask you to give some examples of what you're seeing in the industry. How are different companies combining capabilities to transform their employee experience or their client experience? Ken, I'll let you start as well.
All right. Well, I think the buzz is you see a lot of reference to sort of automation, workflow automation, artificial intelligence. I know some of us work with some artificially intelligent people already, but this is actually using the computer, and you're seeing a lot of that in play now. And what's happened is the last 18 months to 24 months has expedited the technology and the users and the companies and even the feelings of the technology where, and I'm sure most of you can attest to who's had to work from home, is that everybody knew the technology was there. Everybody had used it in some sort because they wanted to work from home on a Wednesday. And then all of a sudden, within weeks, everybody's working home the next day. So not only was it an evolution of technology to ramp up and get this technology for people to use, but also for people who manage those people to be able to understand and learn how to manage those people. And then there's all the other sides of people working from home, getting laid off, customers of labor shortages, which also drove a lot of innovation in technology. So that's some of the things that, that we see. And obviously we've got examples, but I don't want to take anybody else's thunder away. So
That's great. That's great. Micah, over to you.
Sure. I would say on this whole topic of AI and automation, I have a lot of different thoughts, theories, methodologies on it. I think on the whole, I'd be on the side of saying that it's not very intelligent. Like me and Siri don't get along in the car really well right now. Sometimes I just want to throw her out the window. So there, I think everyone would sort of agree in a general sense that there's no robot that's taking emotional calls from customers. I had two good experiences, or different experiences, I guess, over COVID. One was I needed something shipped to the office versus home, and it was sent in the wrong direction. So I went to, I think it was Canada Post website, hit up a chat bot, and went through redirecting, getting it to swap out the shipping address without ever interacting with a human being. You know what I mean? And so that technology is here. It's actually been around for a long time. It's like decision tree on the back end. It's not really thinking about it so much as it is a designed experience. And you take your simple stuff that's, you get a lot of volume on, and you design for those experiences. And so that's one way of working at, automations, and we'll say, I'll put in quotes, but AI. And then on the other side of it, I made a call to FedEx the other day about my wife's iPhone case that was coming in, and I sent her the wrong address. I don't know what's wrong with me, but wrong address, an old address in Moncton. And so I went, it was this voice speech bot girl, and it was a horrible experience, and she was terrible, and it got me the wrong answer. And I had £0, until I got a human. Human gave me perfect service, did a great job, right? And so there's, you can fall on both ends of that. And so in closing, I'll just say there was a session I went to by Dr. David Naylor, and he has a website, humanotics.ai. And he has a great set of guides on putting an axis together, and not just saying, let's just throw AI at it, but saying, like, let's break up our processes into stuff that needs to be gotten rid of, deleted, stuff that needs to be simplified, stuff that needs to be staffed with humans, and stuff that needs to be automated. And you do that by looking at the value for your business and the value for the customer. That stuff you're going to staff. And then you have irritants, right? So it's not valuable to your business, but maybe valuable for the customer. Maybe you automate that. And so there's like a really nice view of that. So if you go to his website and check out his stuff, there's a really nice breakdown of what to automate and what to AI.
Some great examples, especially about the decision-making process, right? Like understanding kind of where your value proposition is and invest in automation so it doesn't overlap with your value proposition that you have for your workforce. It's a great example. Gord, anything you'd like to add?
Sure. So one of the things that we're seeing across many industries, especially though in financial services, is as self-serve becomes more and more sophisticated, the types of interactions that actually get escalated to a human being, escalated to an agent, are becoming more and more important to the business. It's during these moments of truth where a good versus bad customer experience can have a direct impact on business objectives. So often large enterprises are coming to me and saying, how can we use automation and artificial intelligence to supercharge and guarantee the success of those human-to-human interactions that are so important to our business objectives? And two areas where we've seen a lot of success are in predictive engagement. What I mean by that is looking at the data across the ecosystem, identity stitching, and then using machine learning algorithms to decide, is now a good time to proactively intervene with a human being to help upsell, cross-sell, improve NPS. So using automation and artificial intelligence to determine when the best way to, and best person to intervene is. Also predictive routing, almost you might say a matchmaking, using AI and automation to determine perhaps Micah or Ken or Colin wants to speak with an agent with a certain profile. Maybe it's Gordon's profile versus another one. How can we optimize for those business outcomes in those moments of truth? And predictive routing and predictive engagement are two areas where we've seen a lot of success.
Yeah, those are great examples. And what you're seeing more and more in the industry is how do you use data to enhance that client experience or enhance, upsell, but really how do you bring data to the person to improve the client experience, but then how do you use data to inform where you automate? You're seeing more and more of that. So maybe let's switch gears a bit and talk a little bit about, the client experience. We hear a lot more about both clients and customers wanting effortless experience, things that are fast, things that are low effort, but at the same time, they want to make sure they're getting the largest amount of value. We're also seeing a lot of trend around AIX, using AI and data and make sure we're including trust and responsibility into the decision-making as we build them. Maybe I'll ask you guys to comment on kind of what you're seeing clients do in this space and kind of the considerations they're making when they're considering implementing AI capabilities. So Kalan, maybe I'll let you kick us off.
Yeah, this is a really interesting question and probably a real kind of pain point for the industry in general, where you have this sort of an expectation from a new customer, so a company that's implementing something like an AI system, and it's probably like the first time they've done it in many cases, and they don't have a really good sense of what it actually means to implement an AI solution and what they should expect as the outcome. So one of the things that we encourage our clients to do is to make sure that they're working with a vendor that gets them to that sort of moment of experience in the shortest possible amount of time. And by that, I mean, if you're building a bot, you want to be talking to it very quickly. If you're building a bot over chat or voice, it doesn't matter. You need to be able to engage with it very quickly. In our world at Five9, we have a platform known as the Studio platform, and that's the environment in which we have customers building these experiences. One of the things that we've noticed over the last few years is that there are emerging best practices. So there are ways that people are conditioned to wanting to engage with these sorts of systems, and from a calling population or a chatting population perspective, and you want to be able to embody those best practices within your actual development environment. So we have a concept, for example, of tasks and a task library, which is kind of like an app store, where you can actually look at content and automations that other people have produced. You can actually copy them into your environment, try them out, evaluate them, and really do that in a tiny amount of time, literally like downloading an app from an app store. I would say though that represents more of a starting point for most companies. It's pretty much universal that people are going to want to customize and expand from there. So get to the point where you can experience something very quickly, but understand that you're going on a journey and that AI does take a while to implement to get to the full benefits of it.
That's great. Micah, I'll let you jump in on this question as well.
Sure. I'm a little bit more sort of one-on-one basics. I feel like it's a mistake to sort of just jump into artificial intelligence when the as-is process isn't figured out, or if you haven't really thought through self-service yet, because there's this great book, 2013 classic in the call center industry called Effortless Experience. I think a lot of people have come across it. It's a great read. One of the big examples in the book is going through Amazon and psychoanalyzing how they're able to hide or completely get rid of their phone number altogether and even chat. That's like a last resort. And so they basically, it's a designed customer experience. So that really doesn't have anything to do with AI per se. I mean, they use data to figure out what their most voluminous calls are and stuff, but they actually, if you go into Amazon right now and look at your recent orders and you try to find a phone number, like you're going to make a return or something for a damaged product, you won't be able to find it. Like you'll click on, it'll force you to click orders. It'll then make you look at a list of orders and pick one. You'll click on that. It'll say, there'll be like 5 options and be like, do you want to return it? You click on it. It'll say, why do you want to return it? Right. And you'll never interact with a human, and it'll force you through the UI to serve self-service yourself. And so, the point I want to make is that we all can do that with our centers. Of course, you have to have executive sponsorship. You have to work with your internal IT team, and there's developers, that kind of thing on your product, user interface, website, apps, whatever. But you can create an effortless experience today with low tech, solutions, and it just requires you to think through, why do customers contact us, and then design those experiences. If you don't have the budget or the money of Amazon or the executive sponsorship, a product like Procedure Flow can help you to map out visually what your as-is process today. You give that to your agents to have design scenario exception conversations, and then you can leverage that visualization to maybe work with those other departments to make some of that stuff happen in your interfaces.
That's great. A great example, right? Like, you don't have to have a huge budget to throw at these things, right? It's about getting creative with the capabilities that we have today, or that you might have, and combining that with some new ones to really do it in an optimized way without having to spend big dollars. Maybe we'll shift gears a little bit to kind of the employee experience and mental health. And I'll ask each of you to kind of give your comments on it. We're seeing a lot of changes in companies' cultures through the pandemic and through other changes that are going on. And companies are really focusing on how do they enable kind of the employee experience, employee engagement, and they're almost prioritizing that over kind of their technology investments. Maybe give me some examples of what you guys are seeing in the shift in culture and how companies are prioritizing, but also how they're bringing kind of their technology investments and their employee experience investments together. Ken, I'll let you start. And we do have a fair amount of time here. So if all four of you want to comment on that, this would be great. But Ken, if you want to start.
Well, I think that with the employees, like I said, I may have not mentioned, but I think the challenge becomes in managing those people that have gone home and focusing on, there's this chasm here where when I saw somebody, I could walk up to them in the water cooler and we could have that quick little chat where it's not all technology, it's sort of less personal. And then you've got to not only be able to manage from a distance, but you also have to be able to be respectful of the employee condition and what's going on in their lives, because with the pandemic and maybe labor shortages, it's not so easily to sort of fix. So there's a lot of drive to sort of make the remote user, the home worker, the employee better, happier at their job. Through technology. It could be as simple. I quoted that, I've used this line before, that, the technology unicorn, which is we want to have one single user interface, right? That would be great, but that's not really going to happen. But what we want to do is try to get it down to one or two, maybe three interfaces, because you send somebody to work from home and they got 15 windows and 3 apps to use to get an answer for a customer. That's not going to, you're just going to add stress to that person. So I think, technology is using the things to sort of weave that in the background to provide a, more seamless integration for your employees to get the information at a faster rate. There's one aspect where you want the customer who calls in to be able to get where they need to right away, but you also have to look at your own employee experience and say, how can I get them to that information to help them make that decision, to help them help that customer? And that's where a lot of the technology is going. And that's where you see things like, and I know, Micah, the artificial intelligence, but I think that's just a sort of a general term where you're talking about how can we automate some of these processes? How can we do this? Whereas instead of somebody having to supervise, every session, let's have some process that does it, and then have a person who looks for exceptions, right? A typical example we had was a customer that had 6 quality assurance people that were going through QM. They're going through and listening to 6 calls per agent per month, and they lost a couple of these people. So what we could do is help mitigate that employment shortage by setting all those call recordings to an AI platform that would analyze, transcribe, and pick out the exceptions for the users, for the supervisors, so they could just look at the exceptions. So now instead of 6 recordings per user per month, they're getting every call recorded and then being flagged for that. So this type of thing of helping on the back end to get the employees what they need is, part of this solution. And then that's where you're seeing a lot of technology. And also, I think the technology always opens up to people that traditionally couldn't come into work might have more access to work now, whereas whether it be a physical or mental impairment or location or family, that they can now work remotely and contribute, make an income, and be part of the success of the company. That's where typically I've been seeing it.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Gord, maybe over to you for an example you're seeing.
Sure, thanks. So everybody talks about customer experience, but I've seen an increase of focus on employee experience. As an example, I'm going to name 4 categories of things that we didn't see very much in RFPs that I'm seeing all the time now. And they all have to do with employee experience. And they are gamification, natural language enabled agent assist, advanced speech analytics, and sentiment analysis. And the reason I mention the RFPs is that there's been a real mind shift. These used to be considered almost Star Wars type technologies, science fiction, stuff that you put on a nice to have, but not necessarily a hard requirement in the RFP. And more we are seeing companies that are asking for these 4 things explicitly. To deep dive a little bit, gamification has to do with the types of strategies and technologies that can be enabled to make the employee's experience more fun in terms of achieving certain targets, helping out a coworker, and getting recognition. Natural language enabled agent assist has to do with looking at different types of bot technologies that can listen to real-time transcriptions and bubble up information that'll help agents do their job better. This is extremely important if you have agents that are less experienced. They might have gone through all the training, but they don't have necessarily the experience of your veteran agents, and agent assist using natural language can help bridge that gap. And then the last 2, specifically advanced speech analytics, as well as sentiment analysis, gives tools to the organization, to the coaches, to the team leads, to really drill down on the nuanced elements of how each and every one of their agents can improve, can raise their game. Because it's not all about statistics. It's often about things like empathy, chattiness, listening. And are there ways that we can use some of these more advanced tools to better arm our agents to be the best agent they can be? So again, gamification, agent assist, speech analytics, and sentiment analysis are 4 things that used to be considered nice to haves, and they're becoming more and more must haves.
Absolutely. And those soft skills are so important. Is kind of what you're seeing, right? Where it's not, when you invest in automation, you need to understand that sweet spot. Where does the human have that role to play? And those soft skills are really where it comes into play. So how do you make sure that you're providing the right amount of data and insight to leaders as well as the agents?
And this ties into my comment that we had at the beginning, whereby even if there's a reduction in total numbers of calls, those calls are getting longer and more important. They represent moments of truth that have a direct impact on the business. So these soft skills are even more important than they used to be.
Yeah, you definitely see that across the industry, right? Like the moments of truth are getting higher and higher as we add
if
more.
I could just add to that, I totally agree that what we're seeing in RFPs and the categories are sort of changing. But I think the other thing too is we have to be mindful of the environment of what a contact center agent is. If we're talking about contact centers, is faced with, during the COVID period. If you go back, a couple of years, a lot of that sort of sense of being part of a company came from the fact that you were in the same building, that you were meeting people and so on. And it was less about the types of interactions you're having on the phone or on chat or whatever. And so we often see people thinking of automation as a way of like replacing agents, but that's actually not the angle that we take here at Five9. We really think about improving the quality of the agent experience in the form of either agent assist technology or really taking away those sort of low value, repetitive, kind of monotonous type interactions that they've been forced to do historically, and allow them to work on those high value activities where humans are really great. Anything to do with empathy, anything to do with sort of trying to relate to the caller or chat participant is where agents should be used. And so use those skills of those agents and get them best placed within the organization.
Yeah, 100% agree. 100% agree. Micah, anything you'd like to add to this conversation?
Yeah, I think it's mostly been said, but it's worth saying that, like, in an age of where we're talking more about mental health and, people being somewhat depressed, or, I would say contact center jobs are really challenging. You've got a lot of angry people calling in all the time. It's thankless work often. Sometimes you can go a long time without having thank yous. I've done the job. And I think it's important for the companies, for the organizations and departments to really take care of agents, because that will reflect on the experience for the customer, obviously. And so something as simple as, like, I had a laptop not too long ago. It took me like 2 minutes to open up Word documents or PowerPoints. It would just sit there and spin. And I got a new Mac computer with an M1 chip, and everything just opens instantaneously. And it brings joy to my day. Like, it makes me feel happy just that I have this machine that just, I know it's going to work, and everything's just snappy. And so little things like that, like the headsets, the tooling, the hardware, and then of course the software that they have to use to do their job. Is it intuitive or is it frustrating? Does it help them get through the systems faster? Or, am I getting the knowledge that I need in the right format or in the right way, right? You just pop a big blob of text up of an agent, they got to read it and figure it out, or do you give them something that's, easier to go through? That's a little hard sell for procedure flow. But anyway, like, good tooling that's intuitive, fun to use is going to make a difference to help them deliver joy to their customers. Imagine if the agent is on first call resolution, is delivering great answers, and the customers are appreciating those answers. They're going to be happier. They're going to be, less stressed out. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really about understanding, right, the employee experience and understanding what kind of you want that to look like as you invest in kind of these new capabilities, and be very deliberate about where you're making those investments to find the right balance for both your employees and the client. Well, I mean, watching this, we have hundreds of leaders, whether they're operational leaders or transformational leaders. Maybe I'll ask you all on, what's the one piece of advice that you would give these leaders when they're looking to transform kind of their business and take advantage of some of these next gen capabilities? Ken, you want to kick us off?
Yes, I think what's become has become rapidly, showing up really quickly is that, and anybody that has teenage aged children will see this. And I think and my advice would be to know your demographics, right? Because the reality is that you're 50 and above, and I hate to say that I'm part of that club. I might want to be able to speak to somebody on a phone. So the fact they go on a website, can't find a phone number, there are organizations I don't use because I can't find a way to call them. But if you're 30 to 50, you're okay with maybe just an email support ticket. But what we see and I see is sort of the new voice paradigm. And voice is sort of, everybody's like, voice is dead and it's going to go away. But look at a teenager. Look at how when they talk, they will talk to Alexa, they'll talk to Siri, they will talk in a Snapchat and send a message to their friend. They won't actually be on necessarily FaceTime. So this sort of one-way interaction, ask them to pick up a phone and make a reservation. That's not going to happen, right? If they do it on the web, they will. So this new paradigm is where, things like the virtual agents, like technology that Callan and Five9 have, where, you're allowing them to be able to interact with a virtual voice that's going to be able to deal with it. And it's not actually a human. And I think in saying that, know your demographics, because those tweeners and teenagers are your customers in the future, right? So they want to engage with you in the way that they want to engage. And so I think it's important to understand the demographics of your customer base so that you know how to apply the technology properly to each of those demographics.
Fantastic advice. Really knowing your customer base, and making sure you're making those investments in the right areas. Maybe Gord, any example or any advice you would give any of the leaders?
Sure. So I love technology. I love the features. It's of real interest to me. But we can't lose sight of the most important thing, is that our customers, they have business objectives and they want to achieve them. And I had an aha moment when I was in the room with an executive from a large bank. And this person said this. He said, how come all my dashboards are green, but I'm not achieving my business objectives? And the reason this was an aha moment for me is that we need to make sure that there's connective tissue between the solutions and technologies, the operational metrics, and the strategic business objectives of the companies. And far too often, we either too focused on the technology, whether that be chat, AI, what have you, or too focused on the low-level metrics like average handle time, which is still important, but not the be-all and end-all. And we're not focused enough on the connective tissue between all three, the solutions and technology, the operational metrics, as well as the strategic business objectives of each and every one of our customers. It is by making sure that there is a solid line through all three and that they can be articulated about the why we're doing this. The what and the how is important, but what's preeminent is the why. And if we can articulate that why through those three levels, then we're going to help our customers be successful. And this holds true about whether we're talking about customer experience, employee experience, artificial intelligence, or even basics like media architecture. It's all got to serve the why across all three levels.
Great. Great insight. You know, we have no shortage of data. We can measure so many things, but really focus on the outcome and what are you trying to drive holistically versus each individual metric. Great advice. Glenn, anything you would add as far as, you know, advice you would give leaders?
Yeah, definitely. It's really, I guess, an extension of what Gordon was just saying, but I would just phrase it a little bit differently or have a different spin on it, which is, if you're entering into a project, particularly if it's in a space, you know, with technology you've not used before, you know, AI for many companies is a new technology. Really understand your success metrics. Make sure that you've defined success before you start, and make sure that when you're dealing with a vendor, that they understand what success looks like and they agree that that is success to them as well. So often we see customers that have perhaps an unrealistic expectation of where technology is at or what AI actually means. AI is not synonymous with magic. It's not the same thing. You still go through processes of building and tuning these things. And so making sure you're aligned on success metrics right from the outset of the project is really the biggest suggestion I could give anyone embarking on this journey.
Yeah. And especially now when everything's so integrated, right? You may be using multiple vendors, you have multiple parts of your organization involved. Making sure everybody's really laser focused on those success metrics is really important. Mike, I'll let you finish us off with your last piece of advice.
Yeah, sure. I'll go beyond my field of expertise a little bit and just sort of comment generally. Based on some of the stuff that we see when we're doing demos and just talking to VPs of customer care, customer experience, one of the challenges that I'm seeing, I would call it a mistake that people are making, is they're chasing shiny stuff and they're thinking that a 2 to 3 to 5 year project is going to be a silver bullet. And I think you have to avoid that mistake of chasing shiny stuff at the expense of ignoring your 101 basic stuff. I'll give you an example. I walked into Mark's Work Warehouse yesterday to take a pair of winter boots back that didn't survive, like I bought it in February. The girl at the counter said, on your receipt here in font size 6, it says you have 100 days to return these. And I looked at her and I was like, how are you supposed to test winter boots in 100 days? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And she said, it's our policy. And I said, well, I'm not going to shop here anymore. And so I walked out of the store and I'm not a customer there anymore. I won't buy any more of their stuff because they don't support it. There's nothing more important than customer experience, because it's not about a pair of boots. It's about a permanent customer who buys things when they need them at your place, right? And so if you're like, that front line is just so important, and you're risking it on a bot or you're risking it on what, right? And so you really need to be thoughtful. I'll go back to that David Nylar grid of saying, you know, what's of most value to our customers and what's of most value to us. Let's staff that and provide an excellent agent experience so that they can provide a magical experience for those customers and not a policy. And then if it's something that is not super important to our business, let's automate it. You know, like changing a shipping address is fairly straightforward. Customers aren't going to get too upset about that. And then there's lots of technology partners like David Naylor, you guys, you know, there's lots of people that can walk you through an experience of picking the right solution, the right products to create those automations.
Amazing. That's great. Great advice. So maybe, you know, get into the last question and kind of what you guys are seeing in the future. I mean, the industry has accelerated in transformation, especially over the last year and a half. So I'd love each of your perspective on how do you see the industry evolving? what do you think it's going to happen over the next 2 or 3 years as this acceleration continues to happen? So Colin, maybe I'll let you kick us off.
Okay, so I mean, I think we should sort of set the stage and say that this sort of adoption into AI technology within the contact center or whatever is still very early in its uptake. You could probably count in sort of single-digit percentages the number of organizations that have actually moved into this in any sort of major way. One of the things that we are seeing increasingly is the, if you like, the emergence of new types of like Lego bricks that you can pull together to create these sort of experiences for customers, whether they be call, chat, email, or whatever. We're seeing the rate at which these are entering the market increasing. And so what I expect to see is sort of interfaces and applications that are being made available to customers that seamlessly link these things together. So for example, the seamless use of biometric technology within a flow. I think we will see more of that. The use of empathy detection, sentiment detection, energy-based detection within interactions. I think we'll see more of that. And all of this is going towards making essentially AI appear, smarter, more realistic, and so on. For example, here at Five9, we just integrated a vendor with a virtual voiceover technology that is essentially indistinguishable from a person. Will that take off? Well, we'll wait and see. We'll see how the industry adopts that kind of thing. But just the rate at which these new things are emerging means that you want to be on the lookout for what is that next Lego brick that's going to be able to fundamentally change the type of experience that people are wanting to and will expect.
Yeah, it's a great perspective. And yeah, I mean, I think although we've been accelerating at a pretty fast rate, you're right. Adoption isn't really, and penetration isn't really that high, and you're probably going to see that continue to accelerate as we move forward. Gord, what's your projection?
So a couple of things. First of all, virtualized service is here to stay, particularly in the omnichannel world. Look at what the five of us are doing right now. We're having a lively conversation from different cities all over the map, and it's going to be broadcast into thousands of homes. That is the new normal. And although it's going to morph and evolve, we're not going backwards. At least we're not going back, cut and paste to where we were 5 years ago. The second trend that I see is partially tied to this. It's the notion that the monolithic, distinct jobs, let's say within financial services, that we used to see, whereby you were a contact center, or you were a banker in a brick and mortar branch, or you were a financial advisor that would actually have an appointment with a customer. That is starting to disintegrate. We're starting to see a much more organic workforce, whereby the contact center agent is also potentially a brick and mortar banker in a branch or in a virtual branch. We're starting to see where different technologies are being adopted by financial advisors, not just for the high net worth clients, but also for the middle of the road clients, leveraging technologies to allow them to serve more people. So, and we're also seeing the breakdown between the walls of marketing, sales, and service. So whereas these roles and towers used to be much more segregated, those walls are starting to crumble, and this is a good thing. So if you start to combine the advances in technology, whether those be media technologies or artificial intelligence and automation, the advent of virtualized service and the crumbling of the walls between these towers, I think organizations are going to be more nimble and have more flexibility to deliver better service to their customers. This means more competition, and it means that their customers, are going to be able to differentiate better.
Yeah, great summary. Like traditional barriers of virtualization and silos in the different org structures are coming down. It's going to just increase the pace of transformation, which is fantastic. Ken, I'll pass it to you.
So I think what this was kind of alluded to earlier, we're seeing a lot of prevalence of things like no code technology, where it's drop and drag, where you can enable, you don't need the programmers anymore to sort of get you that higher level technology integration. That seems to be a lot of the trends. We talked a lot about artificial intelligence. We talked about, all the back end pieces happening. I think the reality is, down the road, if anything we've saw in the last 18, 24 months was the ability for the organization to adapt is really what's going to be important. And I wish technology, I do and I do not wish that technology doesn't change so often, because it's difficult to make a decision what you're going to do in 6 months when something new comes around the corner. And I feel for all those who have to sort of plan that out. But the reality is that what's really going to drive a lot of the future, and again, in the software-based and the SaaS-based world, it's going to be for a very short time. This is what's giving you that competitive advantage over your competition, right? Because with the software, I mean, somebody comes up with a new software widget, it literally takes a few weeks or a few months before somebody else has it. But the ability and the adoption of the technology is really to figure out what's giving you that competitive advantage to keep your employees happy, to keep your customers happy, right? And that's going to drive a lot of this stuff, right? It's going to drive a lot of this technology is the customers, right? You keep them happy, you give them a way to escalate to a human if they want to speak to it. You give them a way to do via text if they only want to do via text. That sort of piece is where it's going to offset the rapidity of the evolution of the new technologies that come out there, I think. So that's where I see the future adaptation.
That's great. And really, customers will set the pace, right? The pace of adoption and the kind of desire to keep continuing to push us to be innovative and creative. That's great. So Micah, over to you for the last word. You're on mute, my friend.
Sorry.
Someone has.
The doorbell is ringing here, so real life. If I look forward into the future, and even I would say within a 5-year spread, and I wouldn't have said this up until maybe about a month ago, but I'll tell you guys, I watched Elon Musk's Tesla AI Day on YouTube. It's about 2-3 hours long. Really worth a watch. Like, it's really fun to watch. And they were recruiting artificial intelligence, PhD folks and things like that to their program. And as they went through and showed what the car is able to model and how they're able to do the self-driving stuff now, I had this thought, as I was watching, I was like, this car is like a creature. It's moving around. It's really impressive. First time I've really been impressed by something, robotic that's interacting with its environment. And then obviously at the end of the thing, he says, in 2 years, we're going to have a humanoid robot that uses the exact same AI as the car, and it's going to put bolts onto cars in our factories. And so I think it's close that, customer care is a cost center. Ultimately, the effortless experience would say customers are contacting you because they have a problem and they just want it fixed as quickly as possible. They don't need a Zappos. They don't need you to send them roses or pizza. They just want their problem resolved as quickly as possible. And so if we can automate it, we will automate it. And so as we wait for that to happen, obviously what we've discussed here today is use the technology that's already out there. There's chatbots, there's speech analytics, there's insights that come from, scraping data. There's speech bots. I'm not super big on speech bots, but they exist. And so use that stuff to eat it from one side, again, on that grid, and then do stuff with agent empowerment on the other side. Like, if I look forward a year, maybe 2 years, what I'm seeing actually is an increase in problems on agent experience, because what's going to happen is it already takes 6 to 12 months to onboard somebody properly to be a SME. They turn over at the 12-month mark, so you're not getting much productivity out of them. And then now the whole world is your oyster. So you're some kid living in St. John, New Brunswick in the woods, and you can get a job working for Facebook, no problem now, where maybe they wanted you to move to California before. So now, are you going to work in a call center when you have every option in the world to work for every company in the world? I don't know. You know what I mean? And so there's going to be a lot more mobility. People are going to have a lot more choices, going to be a lot more turnover. And so I think companies really need to think about how they're going to insulate themselves, speed up the onboarding time so that people can come and go from that role, and it doesn't impact the business so much. So that's where Procedure Flow plays. But those are just a couple thoughts out there. Again, the Tesla AI video is lights out. It's really fun to watch.
Awesome. Yeah, and similar to Ken's example, right? Like yours is, the employee experience will set the pace, right? The pace at which we need to invest and transform. Our employees are going to help set the pace for that. Thank each and every one of you for your insights today. I know I'm going to have to go back and re-watch this so I can pick up all of the insights that were delivered over the last 45 minutes. So thank you so much for your time. I would encourage everybody to seek out these companies, seek out this expertise, really dive into understanding what they've seen in the industry. There's virtual booths set up for each of these companies, so definitely seek them out, learn a lot more. I'm sure there's lots more examples that you guys can give our watchers as we make this available. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.